Ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, the illusion of choice. So I had a couple of emails coming in over the same sort of topics. I'm going to mail these together. We had one from Simon Hubler, and we had one from Lucat. So, Lucat said, "Hey TV, due to the new heroic dungeons giving away epic items, do you think that Blizzard will eventually repeat the Days of Wrath, which will eventually put the game at a point where people will be full purple geared when dinging max levels after 2 days, as well as not doing any of the first and second tier raids? Also, you mentioned on there that you would like the whole idea of bringing back old content, but in previous Blue Please episodes you clearly stated you don't like the idea. What you want is new content instead of going back to instances you already did. What made you change your mind?" Well, for one thing, I didn't change my mind on that. I'm okay with them bringing back old content as long as it is not a substitute for new stuff. That's the thing. I'm alright with them rehashing stuff as long as it is not a substitute. And the idea of 4.1, for instance, where is the Abyssal Maw? Where is it? Somebody tell me where the Abyssal Maw is, because that was supposed to come in 4.1. That was that 5-man dungeon. They promised repeatedly to bring us the Abyssal Maw, and they didn't do it. They said, we're going to bring you new 5-mans every major content patch. They didn't do it. They brought us old 5-mans. In fact, old raids converted into 5-mans. That's the problem I've got with it. It's only when it's done right, and when it's done alongside new content, as opposed to as an excuse for it. That's the thing, really, isn't it? I mean, if we see the Firelands coming in 6 months, maybe even 7 months after game launch, which is looking likely, then that would be the most time we have ever gone without a raid dungeon from a launch of a expansion or indeed the vanilla game. That's the most, by far. Because, of course, the most we've ever gone is 6 months with Ulduar. I think we got the first one within about 4.5 months on TBC. We got 2 full-size raid dungeons for that, as well as all the other cool stuff. With vanilla, I think, I can't remember when that was, but with vanilla, I suppose it's even a special case as well, because of course you had 60 levels to go through, and it was quite slow back then, so I don't think it was really such a big deal. But that's the problem I've got with it. If it somehow holds up or is used as a substitute or an excuse for not developing new content, then that makes it bad. If it's done properly and it's used to supplement new content, sure, absolutely. It's not a situation where I absolutely don't want them ever to rehash old content ever. It's got to be done in the right way. That's my concern. However, the main question is what you've got right here, which also was shared by the other guy, who was asking whether or not Kata babies are worse than Wrath babies, and we might get into a similar situation with badge gear. Well, here's my concern, right? Right now, you're in a situation where you cannot get any kind of armor gear, with the exception of, I think, feet, back, trinkets, rings, and some other thing, without getting tokens. If you have a look at the vendor for this, you will see that. The Valor Point list of items. You'll see what's available. Now, right now I'm okay with that. You know, that's supplementary material. This is actually the way the Justice Points used to be. If you remember Justice Points back in TBC, what you could get with Justice Points was... let me try and remember. It was mostly offhands and cloaks and rings and things like that. It was very specific as well, like you get a fire offhand and stuff like that. Obviously you don't do that anymore. My concern is that they will take away the requirement for those tokens, because they have already said, oh, well, we don't want people going back in those old dungeons. We don't want to force people to go back into old content to do new content. This is their attitude, which to me seems ridiculous. Because the problem I have with it is that once you actually get people going and they get into the game, you assume that all they want to do is the latest and greatest. When in reality, what you've got is all this content that you've just made obsolete, that they could do and be perfectly entertained by. And they'll also miss out on a ton of good dungeon content. For instance, the raid content in Cataclysm is actually good. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. It is actually good content. It is well designed. There are some really fun fights in there. There are some challenging fights in there, even on normal. And normal Nefarian has still only been done by, what, 25% of raiding guilds? It's held up pretty well, considering what happened in Wrath, whereby all the content was beaten in 3 days. I mean, even against the hardcore guilds, the normal mode content lasted longer than that, and it took them less time to level up. Think about that. That's really impressive, actually. That is really, really impressive. So, yeah, the content that we have right now is pretty good. I don't see why anyone would not want to do that content. And this is the problem I've got with the badge system. If And I do mean only if they actually stick to their guns and ensure that the armor items, i.e. the tier items that you can get from the combination of badges and tokens, actually stay the way that they should be. Then we'll be in a really great situation. The thing is, and the problem is, this is what happened at the start of Wrath. Yeah? They only allowed you to get like 2 pieces of the tier items from buying it with badges. The rest had to be got with tokens. And then they changed that. And the change was made with Tier 9 onwards. You could get the entirety of the Tier 9 set, and of course the entirety of the Tier 10 set. You get an upgraded set by getting tokens, which was cool, but you could get this in the entirety of this set by simply running 5-mans. That's where I have the problem. Now, right now, you cannot fill up all of the slots, as someone accurately pointed out, by just getting Valor Point gear. You have to go and get tokens as well. But my concern is the fact that you will be able to do that at some point. And I think they will do it. It seems very, very likely. It seems really likely that they will actually allow that. Now, I have to wonder what exactly you can really do to fix that. And I made some suggestions before. Here's the internal bind. The eternal problem. It's almost a catch-22. So, players that have done content to death don't want to repeat it. Okay, that's cool, that's acceptable. However, new players have to do it and alts have to do it. That's a problem. Because you can't gear an alt up without, say, doing the content already. Now, I think the way to fix this is actually BOA items, by not account. I think you should be able to get what are effectively raiding heirlooms that can be traded between characters. And the only way you can get them is by getting tokens from the dungeons which have that kind of item level. Say, for instance, you want heirlooms, they're item level 359. And these only work on max level characters. I'm not saying these work, these don't scale. These are just BOA items. They're not really heirlooms, they're just BOAs. So you can transfer them to anyone on your account. So, you have to get, if you want an item level 359, then you've got to get tokens from item level 359 content in order to build these things. And you can even have quests associated with building these sets of items. I don't know what they could be called, but hey, they're just sort of pseudo-heirlooms. Now that solves the alt problem. Not only does it give people another reason to do the content a bit more, but it also means that they're not running into problems with boosting. You're not having to boost a bunch of players. You can just do this in the meantime, and honestly, I think you could add these tokens in with the existing raids, so you actually get these in addition. Maybe you earn some kind of points that would allow you to purchase this gear. Something like that. That would make sense. I don't really see the need to do old content and multiple characters. That doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. I think if you've already done the content, and you want to gear up an alt, then you should be able to do that aside from that. Now, some might say, well, you can do this already. You're right, you can do this already. Sort of, by using the badge system. The problem is that the badge system has a bunch of other effects on it as well. And the badges are acquired not by doing raids, they are done by doing 5-mans, and this is the big difference between it. If the only place you could earn badges, even if they were BOA, hell, that's even a simpler solution, just make all the badges BOA for God's sake. But if the only way you could earn those badges, those high-level badges, was actually by doing raid content, and not by what you're doing right now, which is by doing daily dungeons, then, and only then, would I not have a problem with it. And that would work, that would be fine. And that would also solve the problem of, oh, well, how do you gear up alts? Well, you do it the same way you did before, you just prevent people from doing it that way. Hell, maybe give people more badges. But only make them drop and be acquired in raid dungeons and not in 5-mans. It's a possibility. This used to be the way of things, by the way. Back at the start of Wrath, you only used to be able to get Valor emblems from actually running raid content. They brought in these daily quests. I think it was around the time of TOC, in fact. That's where everything started to go horribly wrong. Yeah, it was. You were able to do daily dungeon runs for things at that point, but you couldn't do them before that. They were actually in the form of quests as well. They weren't even built into a Dungeon Finder. Dungeon Finder only came in with the ICC patch. So, it seems to me that we could be getting back into a situation. I mean, it's following the same pattern that Wrath did. That's what worries me. It doesn't mean that it will, but I just find it very, very likely that either in the next couple of tiers, they will just say, you know what, you can just have the full set, or they will remove the token requirements from the tier set in the next patch, or something like that, and then we're just back to how it was. And that causes all manner of problems, and you know how it goes. We're talking about people requiring massive gear score for running 5-man dungeons. We're talking about the same kind of things that happened in Wrath. We saw those effects firsthand. You can't ignore them. That was caused by an unreasonable gear requirement. Because gear was so easy to get, people had these ridiculous requirements. Like, oh, you want to run 5-mans with me? You better have gear score 5.5 thousand or whatever. You better be in full epics to run this 5-man content. And that actually shuts down newer players worse than just not giving them a means to acquire this gear that way at all. That's the thing. That's the mistake that Blizzard have made. If you think about it for a second, it makes perfect sense. It's as simple as that. Players put in these massive, and I do mean massive, barriers in front of newer players because of the badge system. The badge system doesn't actually help new players gain gear, it actually prevents them from doing just that. Because everything you do in this game is also a social engineering exercise. Whether it's deliberate or not, it will change the attitude of the player base. Blizzard has got to realize this. How many times do you have to see this happen before you realize this, Blizzard, that people will actually act differently depending on how the game works in terms of its mechanics? Loot distribution changes people's attitude to the way the game works and their fellow players. Please figure this out as quickly as possible. Once you do that, we'll have a better game. You've been listening to Blue Please right here on CynicalBrit.com. We're going to shout-out segment for the next few minutes of the show, folks. Yes, indeed, the next few minutes of the show. Send it in. Send it in. TheMurloc@gmail.com. That is TheMurloc@gmail.com. Or you can send in a tweet if you so desire. Twitter.com/TotalBiscuit. Twitter.com/TotalBiscuit. Or, if you like, you could, of course, throw it in there and send me a message via IRC. Do it, folks. Do it. Shout-out time. Here we go. Shout-out to Pathala for sending in 84.6 ounces of Korean shrimp crackers to Medaron in the mail. That's a lot of shrimp crackers, I think. I'm not entirely sure how much that actually is. A shout-out to iKing for being alive again. That's from Silly Lord. Congratulations. Give NetherRealm a shout-out for Mortal Kombat. Damn right, such a good game. And, well, I'd like to give an anti-shout-out, by the way, to the PlayStation Network. Thanks for getting rid of all of our personal information. I guess we just didn't need that anywhere. Ah. That's nice credit card information you have there. It would be a shame if something were to happen to it. Die, Sony. A shout out to the Alliance and Twilight's Hammer EU for all the awesome Battleground wins over the past few months. You guys have certainly destroyed the image that the Alliance are incompetent. But they are. They are incompetent. A shout out to iKing for being a self-centered mod in the cynical IRC. Well, la-di-da. Oh my. A shout out to XS, Poro, iKing, and Miku for idling fun. A shout out to Valve for releasing Portal 2, one of the best puzzle games ever. I wouldn't know, I was too busy whining. Apparently. Why you not do this? That was more whining. I was going like, whine! Wheatley. Oh my god, why you not pick Wheatley up? Because I'd like to show you some voice acting that you never heard before. Whine! It's not real! Oh my god. A shout out to the Roll Dice Guild on Medivh US from Itachi. Good looking hard modes, 1 out of 12, more to add soon. I think we're on like 8 out of 12 and Trollface. Nyah-dee-da. Are we good? It's pretty awesome. Yes, I know credit card information was encrypted. I don't care, they've still got my damn personal information. I'm getting spam. A shout out to the Cynical Brit IRC mod for exterminating 99% of idiots. A shout out to Trollface.jpg for their continued raid progress. And a shout out to Marvel vs. Capcom 3 for being so much bloody fun to spectate. That's from Blue Sparks. A shout out to Vinny Vici for being an awesome raiding guild, fun of fun people on the Echo Isles. That's from Zalthorian. A shout out to Total Biscuit for being entertainingly disgruntled. That's what I do, folks. That is pretty much my modus operandi. An anti-shout out to Blizzard for bad content in the 0.1 patch. Indeed. Indeed. What else have we got? A shout out to something. Villains on Vacation for being such a good guild. And... And a shout out to Jonas for being awesome. That's from Ollie Ollison. Okay, folks, that's me done for the day. Thank you very much for watching. Ha. Trollolol. I'll just keep doing this, keep pretending that it's some kind of crazy secret video show that only premium subscribers get to access. That'll probably cause me more trouble than it's worth. I'm out of here, folks. Thank you very much. Good night.